Before the world was flooded, before the timeline of humanity was broken and rewritten, the earth was not ruled by men alone, and history had not yet learned how fragile it truly was. There were beings who walked openly among humanity, towering in size, unmatched in strength, and feared by all who encountered them, not as distant myths, but as living realities. The Bible gives these beings only one name, spoken briefly yet heavily, as if the weight of their existence could not be fully captured by words. They were called the Nephilim, a name mentioned almost in passing, yet one whose shadow stretches across the entire ancient world, touching cultures that never knew each other. Genesis states plainly, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and then moves on, offering no explanation of who they truly were, or why their presence demanded divine attention. What Scripture does not explain directly, ancient tradition attempts to remember, hinting that these beings were not fully human, nor were they meant to exist at all. They were born from a forbidden union, a crossing of boundaries between heaven and earth that was never intended to be crossed and never permitted to endure. Angels descended, not in glory but in rebellion. Human women were taken, and from this union something unnatural entered the world, something that did not belong to the order of creation. Giants were born, not as fairy tales or exaggerated legends, but as beings remembered with fear, whose presence altered the balance of the ancient world. Cities trembled beneath their footsteps. Early humans looked up in awe and terror, and power unlike anything humanity possessed walked openly across the land, across civilizations separated by oceans, languages, and time. The same stories appear again and again. Massive warriors, men of renown, figures too large to erase from memory. Why would cultures that never met remember the same giants? Unless memory survives, even when history is deliberately erased. The Nephilim were not merely strong, they were violent, and ancient texts, like the Book of Enoch, describe a world consumed by bloodshed, corruption, and chaos. Creation itself began to unravel. Heaven watched in silence, and God's judgment did not fall without reason. For the flood was not only about human sin, but about containment. The Nephilim vanished beneath the waters, their bodies destroyed and their era ended. Yet the story does not end there, because ancient theology asks a terrifying question that still echoes today. If the Nephilim were destroyed, what happened to their spirits? Have you ever stumbled upon a verse in an ancient text that just stops you in your tracks? One that feels heavy with untold stories and secrets buried by time. For me, that verse is Genesis 6-4. It's short, almost cryptic, but it opens a door to a world that feels both fantastical and strangely familiar. It says, "The Nephilim were on the earth in those days end. Also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them, they were the heroes of old, men of renown." Who were these Nephilim? The text is brief, but the implications are massive. Let's break it down. We have two groups, the sons of God and the daughters of humans. For centuries, scholars and theologians have debated who these sons of God were. Some believe they were simply righteous men from the lineage of Seth, a stark contrast to the rest of humanity. But another, more dramatic interpretation suggests something far more otherworldly. This theory proposes that the sons of God were celestial beings, angels who left their heavenly domain, drawn to the beauty of human women. Imagine that for a moment, beings of light and spirit, stepping out of their designated place in the cosmic order, all for a connection with mortals. This wasn't just a simple meeting, it was a transgression, a crossing of a sacred boundary that was never meant to be crossed. From this forbidden union, a new race was born, the Nephilim. The name itself, derived from the Hebrew root word Nephilim, means to fall. They were, in essence, the fallen ones, not just in name, but in their very origin, the product of a fall from grace. But what did they look like? How did they act? The Bible describes them as heroes of old, men of renown, but other ancient texts, like the Book of Enoch, paint a much more detailed and terrifying picture. These weren't just tall, strong heroes, they were giants, beings of immense stature and supernatural strength. Picture a world where these titans walked among early human settlements. Their presence would have been awe-inspiring, but also deeply unsettling. They towered over ordinary people, a constant living reminder of a broken cosmic law. According to these ancient traditions, the Nephilim had an insatiable appetite. Their hunger was so great that the earth itself could not sustain them. They consumed all the food produced by humanity, and when that wasn't enough, they turned on the animals, the birds, and eventually, on each other and on the humans themselves. Their existence brought chaos and violence. The world was thrown into disarray. The very fabric of creation, once declared good by its maker, was being corrupted from within. This corruption wasn't just physical. The Book of Enoch claims these fallen angels taught humanity forbidden knowledge. They revealed the secrets of warfare, teaching men how to forge swords and shields. They taught women the art of deception, of cosmetics and adornments. They introduced sorcery, astrology, and secrets that humanity was not yet ready to handle. It was a torrent of information that accelerated humanity's descent into moral decay. The world was no longer just a place of simple human struggles. It was now a battleground of cosmic consequence, tainted by forbidden celestial secrets. Think about the impact this would have on the human psyche. Suddenly, the world is filled with demigods, beings of immense power with no moral compass. The natural order is completely upended. Justice becomes a matter of might, not right. This period is described as a time of immense wickedness, where every intention of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil continually. It's a dark, grim picture. The presence of the Nephilim was a symptom of a much deeper disease, the complete unraveling of creation. This brings us to one of the most famous stories in the Bible, the Great Flood. Why would a loving creator decide to wipe the slate clean with all that happened? The story of the Nephilim provides a chilling context. The flood wasn't just a punishment for human misbehavior. It was a desperate act of cosmic surgery. It was a way to cleanse the earth of a corruption so deep, so pervasive, that it had contaminated the very genetic line of humanity. The Nephilim and their influence had created a world that was The flood was a reset button, a way to preserve a remnant of pure humanity through Noah and his family. But Genesis 6:24 has a curious little phrase. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward. Afterward? How could that be, if they were all wiped out in the flood? This is where the mystery deepens. After the waters receded and humanity began to repopulate the earth, we again see mentions of giants. When the Israelite spies are sent to scout the land of Canaan, they come back with a terrifying report. They say, "We saw the Nephilim there. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them." This suggests a few possibilities. Did some of the Nephilim bloodlines somehow survive the flood? Or was the term Nephilim used more broadly to describe other giant clans they encountered, like the Anakim, the Rephaim, and the Imah? The Bible mentions these other giant tribes, and famous figures like Goliath and King Og of Bashan are described as their descendants. Goliath, the Philistine champion who faced David, was said to be over 9 feet tall. King Og had a bed made of iron that was over 13 feet long. These were not just tall men. They were beings of formidable size and strength, echoes of that original, terrifying race. So, the story of the Nephilim isn't just a strange footnote from the distant past. It's a thread that runs through the ancient narrative, a recurring theme of giants and chaos. It represents a constant struggle against forces that seek to corrupt and derail the human story. It's a tale of boundaries crossed, of forbidden knowledge, and of the catastrophic consequences that follow. Whether you take these stories as literal history, as symbolic allegory, or as myth, their power is undeniable. They speak to a deep-seated human fear of the unknown, of powers greater than ourselves, and of the potential for our own world to descend into chaos. They remind us that the lines between heaven and earth, between the sacred and the profane, are there for a reason. The tale of the Nephilim is a cautionary one. It's about the dangers of unchecked ambition. Whether it's celestial beings lusting after mortals or humans grasping for forbidden knowledge, it's a story that asks us to consider our place in the universe and the responsibilities that come with it. The shadows of these fallen giants stretch far, casting a long dark shape over human history, reminding us of a time when giants walked the earth, and the world was almost lost forever. What do you think? Were the Nephilim real? Are their stories a literal account of history, or powerful myths designed to teach us a lesson? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever looked at the massive megalithic structures of our ancient world, like Stonehenge or the pyramids, and wondered how did people with supposedly primitive tools move and place stones weighing hundreds of tons? The official stories often feel incomplete, leaving us with a sense of awe and a big question mark. But what if the answer is hiding in plain sight, woven into the very fabric of our oldest stories? Almost every ancient culture across the globe, separated by vast oceans and thousands of years, tells tales of a time when giants walked the earth. These aren't just children's bedtime stories. These are foundational myths, historical accounts, and religious texts. From the Anunnaki of ancient Mesopotamia, described as giants who descended from the heavens, to the Nephilim mentioned in ancient Hebrew texts, the stories are eerily consistent. They speak of a race of beings of immense size and strength who lived alongside early humans. Let's journey back to the Fertile Crescent, the cradle of civilization. In Sumerian and Babylonian tablets, we read about Gilgamesh, a king of Uruk, who is said to be two-thirds god and of gigantic stature. His legends describe feats of incredible strength. Then we move to the land of Canaan, where the Bible describes various giant clans. Remember the report from the spies sent into Canaan? They said they saw the Nephilim there and felt like grasshoppers in comparison. This wasn't just a one-off mention. The Rephaim, the Anakim, the Emimal were described as tribes of giants inhabiting the land. Think about the most famous giant of all, Goliath. The story of David and Goliath is often presented as a simple tale of courage. But what if it's more? What if it asks a cultural memory of a time when the last remnants of these giant bloodlines still existed? The text gives his height as 6 cubits and a span that's over 9 feet tall. His armor alone was said to weigh more than 100 pounds. This detailed description suggests a real, physical encounter, not just a symbolic enemy. The story itself implies that Goliath wasn't a unique freak of nature, but a champion from a known race of giants, the Philistines of Gath. Even after the Great Flood, a cataclysm that supposedly wiped the slate clean, these stories persist, suggesting that somehow, these giant lineages survived or re-emerged. The evidence isn't just in written texts. All over the world, we find ancient art that seems to depict these colossal beings. Cave paintings, petroglyphs, and carvings show figures towering over regular-sized humans and animals. In Egypt, we find hieroglyphs showing pharaohs who are depicted as significantly larger than their subjects, while mainstream archaeology often dismisses this as symbolic, representing power and status. The sheer consistency of this artistic choice across different, unconnected cultures is striking. Could it be that these ancient artists were simply drawing what they saw? What about physical evidence? This is where the story gets murky and controversial. Over the past couple of centuries, there have been countless newspaper reports and local accounts of giant skeletons being unearthed. From North America's mound builders to discoveries in South America and Europe, stories pop up about skeletons ranging from 8 to 12 feet or even taller. Often, these accounts describe skeletons with double rows of teeth or other unusual features. The frustrating part is that these incredible finds seem to vanish. But the sheer volume of these independent reports makes you wonder, is there a concerted effort to suppress this information? Is history being curated to fit a specific narrative? Legends from Native American tribes, like the Paiute, talk of their ancestors fighting wars against a race of red-haired giants. They even point to specific locations, like Lovelock Cave in Nevada, where they say these giants made their last stand. And interestingly, excavations at Lovelock Cave in the early 20th century did uncover unusually large human remains and artifacts, though their true nature is still debated today. Let's connect the dots on a global map. In South America, the legends of the Incan creator god Viracocha describe him and his companions as white-skinned bearded giants. In Greek mythology, we have the Titans and the Gigantes, powerful giants who battled the Olympian gods. Norse mythology tells of the Jotun, the frost giants of Jotunheimer. From the Fomorians of Ireland to the Datius of India, the pattern is undeniable. These aren't just isolated myths, they are threads of a shared global memory. How could so many distinct civilizations, with no contact with one another, all independently invent such similar stories? The principle of Occam's razor suggests the simplest explanation is often the correct one. Perhaps the simplest explanation is that these stories aren't just stories. They are the fragmented, mythologized memories of a genuine chapter in human or pre. This isn't about rewriting history overnight. It's about asking questions and being open to possibilities that stretch the boundaries of our conventional understanding. The megalithic structures stand as silent, stone witnesses. The ancient texts and carvings speak in a language we are just beginning to reconsider. The persistent legends from every corner of the earth echo a forgotten truth. Maybe the giants of myth weren't mythical at all. Maybe they were the architects, the kings, the adversaries of our ancient past. Perhaps history is not just bigger than we think. Kitstaller. The evidence is all around us, waiting for us to look at it with fresh eyes and an open mind. What do you think? Is it all just a coincidence? Or are we standing on the shoulders of forgotten giants? Have you ever wondered about the giants mentioned in ancient texts? The stories of heroes and monstrous beings that roamed the earth in a forgotten age? Today, we're diving deep into one of the most enigmatic and debated topics from ancient history, the Nephilim and their connection to the Great Flood. This isn't just a story of rain in an ark. It's a tale of cosmic rebellion, forbidden knowledge, and a world so corrupted it had to be washed clean. So, what exactly were the Nephilim? The term itself is shrouded in mystery, but ancient sources describe them as the offspring of a forbidden union between celestial beings, often called the Watchers, and human women. Imagine this: beings from another realm, angels if you will, who were meant to be guardians, instead became captivated by humanity. They descended to earth, broke their sacred duty, and mingled with mortals. The result of this union was a race of giants, the Nephilim. These weren't just tall people. The legends paint a picture of beings with immense power, superhuman strength, and an insatiable appetite. They were the titans of their time, the mighty men of old, men of renown. But their existence came at a terrible price. The knowledge their fathers, the Watchers, brought to humanity was not all beneficial. They taught mankind the arts of war, how to forge weapons, the secrets of seduction and adornment, and sorcery. What started as a divine mission of observation turned into a catalyst for chaos. The world spiraled into violence. The Nephilim, with their ravenous hunger, began to consume everything: the crops, the animals, and eventually, they turned on humanity and even each other. The earth became a battlefield, filled with bloodshed, injustice, and lawlessness. The very fabric of creation was being torn apart by the actions of these fallen Watchers and their giant offspring. The world was groaning under the weight of this corruption, a corruption that stained the very soul of humanity. Think of it as a virus, spreading uncontrollably and infecting everything it touched. This is where the story takes a dramatic turn. The cries of the oppressed and the stench of corruption reached the heavens. A judgment was passed, not just on humanity, but on the instigators of this chaos, the Watchers. Ancient texts describe how these celestial beings were captured and bound in chains, cast into abysses of total darkness to await a final judgment. Their punishment was to watch helplessly as the world they had corrupted faced its own reckoning. They were imprisoned for abandoning their posts and leading humanity astray. And what was that reckoning? The Great Flood. Many people think of the flood as a blanket punishment for a sinful world, but when we view it through the lens of the Nephilim story, it takes on a new meaning. It wasn't just about punishing bad behavior. It was a radical act of purification. It was cosmic surgery, designed to cut out the unnatural genetic and spiritual corruption that had taken root. The bloodline of the Nephilim was a contamination, a dead end in the human story that had to be erased. So, the floodgates of the heavens opened, and the fountains of the deep burst forth. Water, the universal symbol of cleansing and rebirth, became the instrument of destruction. This wasn't a gentle rain. It was a cataclysm of unimaginable scale. The waters rose, covering the valleys, the plains, and swallowing the highest mountains. It was a complete and total reset button for the planet. The world that was, a world teeming with these hybrid giants and steeped in their violence, was systematically dismantled. Imagine the scene. The mighty Nephilim, who once dominated the earth with their brute strength, were now powerless against the rising tide. Their height, their power, it meant nothing against the relentless force of nature unleashed. They were washed away, their bodies disappearing beneath the churning, muddy waters. The monuments they may have built, the kingdoms they may have ruled, all erased from the physical record. The flood was a divine scouring, scrubbing the earth clean of this specific, unnatural blight. It was the end of the age of giants. When the rains finally stopped and the waters began to recede, a new, clean world emerged. It was a silent, empty planet, waiting for a fresh start. The Ark, carrying the last remnant of pure humanity in the animal kingdom, came to rest. The slate had been wiped clean. The Nephilim were gone, erased from the pages of active history. The experiment of the Watchers had been a catastrophic failure, and the flood was the final, definitive answer to it. But here's the most fascinating part of the story. While the Nephilim were erased from the physical world, they were not erased from memory. Their story survived. It was passed down through generations, whispered in hushed tones, and recorded in sacred and apocryphal texts. The memory of the giants, of the Watchers who fell, and of the world-altering flood became a foundational story for many cultures. It served as a stark warning about the dangers of forbidden knowledge, the consequences of overstepping boundaries, and the cosmic battle between order and chaos. Did some of the giants' bloodlines survive? Some ancient texts seem to suggest that the Nephilim or other giants reappeared after the flood, leading to more conflicts. Think of Goliath, the giant warrior David faced. Was he a descendant of a surviving line, or was the term used to describe any formidable, giant-like foe? These are questions that scholars and theologians have debated for centuries. The shadow of the Nephilim is long, and it seems to stretch even into the post-flood world. This powerful narrative forces us to look at the Great Flood, not as a simple children's story about animals on a boat, but as a profound and dramatic event in the history of the cosmos. It's a story about boundaries, consequences, and the lengths to which creation will go to preserve its integrity. It's a reminder that some lines are not meant to be crossed. The story of the Nephilim is a chilling, epic tale that adds a whole new layer of depth and intrigue to our understanding of the ancient world. It's a testament to the idea that even when history is washed away, memory finds a way to survive. What do you think? Is this a literal account of history, a powerful allegory, or something else entirely? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever looked at the massive ancient structures scattered across our planet, places like Baalbek, Stonehenge, or the pyramids, and wondered, who could have built these? Mainstream history tells us it was early humans, using primitive tools and sheer manpower. But what if there's another explanation? An explanation hidden in the fringes of our oldest texts. A story of a time when giants walked the earth. The Bible, the Book of Enoch, and countless other ancient traditions from around the globe all speak of the Nephilim. Genesis 6:2-4 describes them as the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men. They were a race of giants, mighty men of old, men of renown. But what happened to them? The most common answer is that they were wiped out in the Great Flood, a cataclysmic event sent to cleanse the world of their corruption and violence. The giants are gone, the floodwaters receded, and humanity, through Noah and his family, was given a second chance. We began to rebuild, to spread across the continents, creating new civilizations, new cultures, and new histories. But did the influence of the Nephilim truly vanish beneath the waves? Their legacy, it seems, is etched into the very foundation of our world. We see it in the megalithic structures that defy modern engineering, in the legends of giant kings, and titans that persist in every culture, and in the strange elongated skulls found from Peru to Egypt. These aren't just myths, they are echoes of a forgotten chapter of our past, a chapter where humanity lived in the shadow of beings far greater in strength. The world we inherited was not a blank slate. It was a world shaped by their presence and, perhaps, haunted by their absence. However, if evil on that scale could be so easily erased by a flood, our world would be a very different place. Evil doesn't just disappear, it adapts. It changes its form, its methods, its name. The ancient texts tell us that when the Nephilim died, their physical bodies were destroyed. But what became of their spirits? These were not purely human spirits, nor were they angelic. They were a hybrid, an unnatural fusion with no place in heaven or on earth. Is it possible that these restless, disembodied spirits are the very same entities we now call demons? This theory suggests that the source of so much spiritual turmoil, the demonic forces that tempt, torment, and deceive humanity, are the lingering souls of the giants who once oppressed it. Think about the nature of demonic activity described throughout history: possession, obsession with the physical world, a deep-seated hatred for humanity, and a desire to corrupt and destroy. This behavior aligns perfectly with the idea of a spirit that has lost its body and desperately seeks to inhabit another, to once again experience the physical world that was violently torn from. It's a terrifying thought. The spirits of the ancient giants, trapped on earth, still waging their war against humanity, not with physical might, but from the shadows of the spiritual realm. They whisper in our ears, manipulate our desires, and prey on our weaknesses. The evil didn't vanish in the flood, it just became invisible. To truly understand the nature of the demonic, to grasp the enemy we face in the spiritual war, we must look back to its origin. It's not enough to simply acknowledge their existence. We have to trace their lineage. Where did they come from? Why are they here? And what do they want? The answers aren't just theological trivia. They are critical intelligence for anyone seeking to navigate the spiritual realities of our world. The Bible tells us to be sober and vigilant because our adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. But what if that lion is not a singular entity, but a legion of disembodied, ancient spirits? The connection between the Nephilim and demons provides a cohesive framework that explains many biblical mysteries. It clarifies why demonic spirits are so desperate to possess physical bodies, why they are referred to as unclean spirits, and why they recognize Jesus' authority instantly. They knew him because their spiritual fathers, the fallen angels, knew him from the time before their fall. They are part of an ancient rebellion, and their story is intertwined with our own, from the first days of creation to the final judgment. By exploring this connection, we're not just digging up ancient history. We're uncovering the battle plan of an unseen enemy. We must understand their origin to understand their agenda. Join us as we continue to pull back the veil on these profound mysteries. In our next episode, we will dive even deeper into the specific texts and theological arguments that support this startling theory. We'll ask the critical question: are demons the spirits of the Nephilim? The answer could change everything you thought you knew about the spiritual world. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss it.